All right, this is our judge training for Gesellfechten. The semaphores will be discussed, the placement of the judges, the role of the judges will be discussed. This is primarily for judge training. However, we will have fencing going on and discuss the fencing actions as well. So this could be useful for fencers that are participating in the event. The judging will be the same for all events. The only real variances by weapon system will be some nuances that will be discussed before those individual events. The overall judging and placement of the referee, fencers, scoring system is all the same. So to begin, this is Ryan Hetchler. Ryan will be our referee for today. This is Zeke Roselle and Micaiah Elliott. They are going to be our judges. These two fellows, Derek Nash, Sam Beardsley, will be our fencing examples. They're poor examples, but they're all we've got. So here we have our judges and fencers have taken their positions in the ring. The fencers, of course, start apart from each other. They will wait on the referee to call. The judge placement is also important here. Zeke is watching. Zeke, raise your hand when I say your name. Yeah. Zeke is watching specifically for Derek. Derek is his fencer. You can almost think of him like he is Derek's second, watching everything that happens. Micaiah is watching for Sam. Micaiah is observing every action Sam does or anything that would be a quality engagement. Sam and Derek are our fencers, of course. They will fence to the best of their ability and not stop until the referee says, halt. Right. Pretty typical, pretty standard. Zeke raises his hand, and Micaiah, our judges, will be watching again for their individual fencers. If they see an engagement or strike by either fencer, though, they're allowed to say, point. Say it again. Point. Okay. They will say point loudly, and the fencers will keep fighting until the referee says, halt. Right. So you will see examples of that here now. The judges will move around, keeping an eye on their individual fencer and making sure they're paying attention to the action.
Fighters ready.
Ready.
Judges ready.
Ready.
First round. Engage.
Corners, please.
Fighters. Judges. Judges come in.
So before they closed, Sam hit him in the leg on the far side, on the opposite side.
Do you think that was in tempo?
I thought it was before Derek's tempo. I think Sam hit him in the leg and then they came in.
Thank you.
So what just happened is we fight for rounds. We're not fighting in a match. Rounds are cumulative, meaning that Sam and Derek here will fight 3 to 5 rounds, depending on the placement in the event, whether it's pools, elims, finals, and those rounds will carry over. Sam fights 5 people, 4 people in his pool. He fights 3 rounds for each of those 4 fights that he's in. Then he could walk away with potentially 12 rounds. At the end of the day, the person with the most rounds is considered to be more successful and advances on. So really what we're measuring here is the ability to defend and survive an engagement rather than necessarily to score in an engagement. Double kills count as a round loss for both fencers. In the round that we just watched, we saw Zeke and Zeke and Micaiah both yell point relatively at the same time as an engagement happens. We saw the referee call halt and pull them back to the fencing line. The judges put their heads down so that they're not influenced by the fighters or the referee or the audience or anyone else. And from there, they're given the opportunity to make a call. Let's go ahead and simulate that again real quick. Say halt for me, Ryan.
Halt.
Okay. And repeat everything else.
Corners, please. Fighters.
So the fighters will then call for who scored. Sam is pointing at Derek saying, Derek hit me. Derek is raising for himself saying, I hit Sam, and this counts as 2 votes for Derek at this point. The referee takes that into account and then calls for his judges.
Judges.
The judges raise their hand if they feel like their fighter hit. In this case, Zeke raises his hand because he feels like Derek had scoring action, but Micaiah also raises his hand. At the end of the day, despite the outcome, and Ryan does pull them in, some of that is just for a little bit of judge training. Go ahead.
Judges, come in, please.
But also to question and make sure that he is seeing what he thought he saw. Go ahead.
Did you see what did you see from Sam? Did you feel like it was good quality?
I thought I saw a quality hit from Sam to Derek's leg.
Thank you.
The referee confirms what it is that he thought was happening. He may not engage the other judge at all. He asks very specific questions, not open-ended questions, or he doesn't let the judge deliberate or hem or haw on what he thinks was happening. He just asks specifically what he saw for his fighter, or in some cases, what he saw from the other fighter, if anything. In this case, Ryan makes his decision. The math should be pretty clear here. That's 1 vote from Sam to Derek, 1 vote for Derek, from Derek to Derek, of course, and 1 vote from Zeke to Derek. There's also 1 vote for Sam from his corner man because he's a good homeboy like that. But at the end of the day, that's 3 votes for Derek and 1 vote for Sam. In the case of a tie, the referee may either reset the positions and make them fence again if they're not clear or he felt like something on his end was wrong. For instance, if he called halt too early or it just was very much unclear what it is that happened. We try to prevent that as much as possible, however, because it can influence the course of the way the fighters fence in our experience. In most situations, if it's in the case of a tie, go ahead and show me the scoring for a tie. Begin from halt. Go ahead.
Halt. Fighters.
Both fighters raise their weapons saying they indicate they hit.
Judges.
Both judges raise their hands indicating that they hit. At this point, the referee can either make a decision that this is a double kill. Since both fighters are saying they hit each other, the judges saw the same thing, the referee will probably award this as a double kill. Go ahead.
First round, double kill.
Okay. In the case of a double kill, of course, that means really essentially no rounds awarded, and they move on to round 2. In 3 possible attempts, that means neither of them scored anything in this exchange because both of them died. However, if it was a draw in scoring, again, Derek and Sam call for themselves. Go ahead. And then the referee calls for judges.
Judges.
And the judges both raise their hands. In this situation, the referee may make the decision either to just reset the fighters, or in some situations, if he felt like one engagement was with poor quality, he may go ahead and award that point to one of the fighters. Go ahead.
Go ahead and reset and Krieg.
If we reset in Krieg distance. Krieg being it takes less than 1 step to hit your target. A little closer, please. Yeah. So they are essentially already in fighting distance, right where they would have left off, and they resume when the referee says engage.
Ready? Engage. All right. Corners, please. Fighters. Judges. Second round. Derek.
So again, we now have Judge Zeke and fencer Derek. Go ahead and show me who you are. Okay. And the semaphores, the actual motions and examples of what the action is or how we're scoring or calling it, it's very simple. When the referee says,
Fighters. Halt.
the referee says halt, the judge immediately goes back to their corner and puts their head down. So they are not influenced at all by the outcome and just reviewing what it is that they thought happened in their mind. They're not paying attention to the referee. They're not paying attention to the fencers or anything else. They're looking down or they have their eyes closed. So from the beginning, we say halt. And
Halt.
the judge goes back to the corner. And then the referee says,
Fighters.
calling for the fighters to make their call first. The fighter will either lift their arm to indicate that they scored. They will point at their opponent to indicate that their opponent scored, or nothing done. In the case of a double kill, since they hit, they would do what, Derek? They would raise their hand, meaning, yes, I hit him. They're not indicating anything for the other fighter. That's for the judges and the other fighter to call. After asking the fighter what the call is, the referee says,
Judges.
and the judge does essentially the same thing. They raise their hand if their fighter hit, or if their fighter did nothing, they do nothing. They do not call for the other fighter, although they may call point if they saw the other fighter hit their fighter. They will not score for them. One more example, just to make this clear.
Third round. Ready? Engage.
The judge moves around, making sure he can see his fighter. Again, he's watching to see if his fighter scores at all on the opponent. The referee, the lovely Ryan, called halt and called the fencers back to their corners. The judge, Micaiah here, immediately puts his head down so that he is not influenced or paying attention at all to what happened with the fencer or what happens with the judge or anyone else, just what it is that he's reviewing in his mind. He called point in the exchange. The referee called halt, and he walks back to his line. At this point, the referee says,
Fighters.
Sam raises his weapon to indicate that he hit, that he scored against Derek. And then the referee says,
Judges.
the judge believes that Sam also hit, so that is 2 votes for Sam. In this example, we're going to talk about quality of exchange. The first example we're going to use here is the thrust. The thrust is somewhat controversial. We try to err on the side of safety. In this example, this is going to be a poor thrust. So Derek initiates a thrust towards his opponent. Sam moves away from that thrust as Derek's arms are extended, but the point does still touch Sam. Engage. This,
Halt.
okay, and go ahead.
Fighters.
Derek feels like he hit. Sam is like, I didn't think anything happened. The referee is not really necessarily sure at this point. Maybe it was just blocked by vision. Of course, he wants to ask the judges their perspective. Go ahead.
Judges.
The judge did not feel like that scored. Neither judge felt like anything happened. Derek, of course, called for himself because he's like that. What was that? Right. So the referee then calls,
Nothing done.
nothing done. And when he resets them,
Reset and creep.
and we do it again. Next, we're going to talk about the dreaded leg cut, the Geisling shot, and we're going to talk about one-handed thrusts. Sam is going to be our example here. Sam throws the Geisling shot at Derek's leg. Go ahead. Okay. Edge alignment is critical in this situation. The judges and the refs will be looking for quality of that stroke. If it looked like both it didn't have necessarily sufficient contact, but also the edge alignment was not perfect, here's what we're looking for in that perfect edge alignment. Show me the quillions parallel with the floor with your cut. Go ahead, do it again, and hold it there. So right here you can see the quillions are parallel with the floor. Show me if it's bad. Okay, at this point, those quillions are turned. That is not sufficient. That applies to just about every hue in this situation. As you can see, the natural follow-up is probably going to be Derek thrusting Sam in the face. So if he misses, then nothing done, of course. Let's assume he was being nice, which is very uncharacteristic of Derek, but we'll assume that. You can reset. Thank you. Quality with these leg shots will be highly scrutinized. The referee will pull in judges for nearly every single call to make sure that the judges agree that it is good quality. We're not trying to disincentivize people from doing them, just to keep it fair that everybody agrees that it was a clear, good, honest attack and not just flailing at somebody's leg. Also, the one-arm thrust, go ahead and show me that, Sam. Same thing we were talking about before with the thrust. If it reaches out, this can be very deceptive to the referee and the judge. They see it passes Derek's shoulder line, but as we can see, it's really not even touching Derek at this point. It could potentially look like he has been thrust, and that is good enough. In this situation, if arms are extended and it looks like it went past, you can reset. The referee will call halt, call the judges back to the line, and the fighters back to the line, and then call the judges in. Go ahead.
Halt. Corners, please. Fighters. Judges. Judges, come in.
Okay. He'll call the judges in, and he will look for point of view on that thrust. He knows that Zeke was standing next to him. Micaiah was on the opposite side, so he asked Micaiah, "Did you have a good angle on that thrust?"
Yeah, I saw it. It didn't look clean.
No contact?
Yeah, it didn't look like it made contact.
Thank you. In this situation, judge integrity and scrutiny is very important, which again is why it's so important that you're paying attention as a judge at the event. That being said, if it is a situation that the fighters were to call, like Derek was to call that Sam hit him, yeah, Sam got me, and Sam was to say, yeah, I got him, at that point, even if the judge was to say it didn't necessarily look like it had good contact, the referee may go through and err on the side of the fighters. Typically, that's what we'll do in most situations, unless it looks like it's just a question of quality that neither fighters really could have told exactly what was happening. So, in this example, we're going to discuss the slice. The slice is a very overlooked opportunity for most fencers. It occurs quickly in fights and is sometimes difficult to call. This is important for judges to pay attention to what is a quality slice and what should be scored. In this example, Derek misses Sam's face with his thrust. Go ahead. But at this point, he has an opportunity to slice his opponent's neck, the side of his cheek, his head, and instead, he just applies pressure, pressing Sam. This, if the referee calls halt, and the fighters stop right there. If there was just no slicing contact, then that is just a press and not a slice. That pressing, while dangerous and painful to the other person in real life, is not considered a scoring action at this event. At that point, we would not award any sort of quality there for that. If the referee was to call in the judges, go ahead.
Judges, come in.
He has questions about what it is that happened.
So did you see any pushing or
pulling on that cut?
No, like it just pressed onto his neck.
Did you see anything?
I was on the opposite side, didn't get a good view.
Thank you.
Then that is sufficient for the referee to determine, based on that action, that there was no actual slice. The areas that we look for in the slice are, of course, the neck. And again, this needs to be applied with a pushing or pulling motion. Can be pushed forward, can be pulled back with sufficient contact. Again, there's a difference between that and missing your opponent and just gesturing violently. Show me what that looks like. Right? That, of course, is just missing your opponent. That's not a slice. And there's a difference between, we'll skip that. The other targets that we look for are the wrists or the underarm. Go ahead. Pick your sword up, Sam. Go ahead. Okay. That slicing action to the forearms, to the wrist, is considered a scoring action. Or to the underarm, like he misses with the thrust under the arm and then slices his opponent. That is a scoring action. Slices across the body or the legs or lower extremities are not sufficient in this competition to be called a scoring action. Somewhat for safety and somewhat for difficulty of calling, not necessarily that they wouldn't necessarily be lethal. Although I think I'd argue that across the chest it's pretty tough to call it lethal. In this example, we are going to swap the role of judges and fencers. I hope that's not confusing. Derek was complaining that his face was getting tired from smiling, so we thought we'd go ahead and just switch. Oh, poor Derek. So Micaiah and Zeke are our fencers now, and we're going to talk about wrestling actions. In this example, the referee goes ahead and starts the fight. Ready?
Fighters ready. Ready. Judges ready. Ready. First round, engage.
The fencers have an opportunity to get into Krieg and then work into fencing.
Halt.
The action can happen a few different ways. If the referee determines that nothing happened, he calls the fighters back to their line.
Corners, please. Fighters. Judges. All right, nothing done.
And he resets them back in Krieg.
Go ahead and reset and creep.
How we determine if nothing is done is if anything would have potentially been a fatal encounter in that situation. An arm lock, a headlock, lift for a throw, a pommel strike, any sort of situation that would have been a valid action in Krieg. In wrestling, this can be very difficult to determine. We do want to allow wrestling at our event, at all events. Safety is always a question. In this example, safety is a big aspect of the wrestling demonstration. So in this same example, the referee lets the action continue on a little further, and Zeke gets Micaiah into a position where he is about to be thrown. Ready?
Engage. Halt.
At this point, of course, there is no opportunity for Micaiah to defend himself. Zeke had both control of his blade, had his upper and lower extremities locked up in a situation that he was not able to defend, and was about to dump Micaiah onto his head. Instead of finishing the throw, or feeling like he needed to finish the throw for it to be called, the referee stops the action and awards the round to Zeke out of fairness for the attempt at ringen and Micaiah's inability to defend that position, as is tradition. In this situation, Micaiah, they enter into Krieg again. Ready?
Ready? Engage.
Micaiah starts the action, has an opportunity to isolate his opponent's weapon and pommel strike his opponent. As he does so, the referee could call halt at this point because, again, there's no real opportunity for Zeke to defend himself. Now, this same situation, stay there, except Zeke has his arm up and he is stopping the action. The referee will allow this action to continue, and the judges will be looking for a significant strike to either the mask from the pommel or a position that could potentially end up in a throw and ring. And let's go ahead and let it continue, mostly just because I'm a sadist and I want to see what happens. Ready? Engage. Halt.
Halt.
At this point, again, we called halt maybe a little too early. It's not really clear that anything happened, but we're getting into a situation that safety may be a concern with arm locks, so we may just go ahead and call halt there for safety, or that may be something that continues on. Maybe not the best example. I just didn't want to get ran into when I had a camera in my hand, because these people are savages. In this example, we will discuss lifts from Krieg. Ready?
Engage.
Halt. Again, in this situation, Zeke shows good form, isolates his opponent's lower extremities, upper extremities, and his opponent has his weapon in the air, but also contained and locked up so that he's not able to defend with that. It is a pretty clear indicator that Micaiah can only really use strength to try to get out of this situation. There's not a whole lot of technique left involved. The moment there's no technique in this situation, the referee calls halt and ends the engagement. Let's look at a sloppy example. Ready? Engage. Scramble. Halt. The referee will give them about a 3 count when they're locked up in that position, not out loud, but in his head, and then stop the action.